All right, for my first pick of the Week 9 Sunday six-pack presented by FanDuel, I am going with the Indianapolis Colts plus 5.5 at the New England Patriots. Yeah, this is ugly, but I just think that this number one, my raw number is much lower than this. I'm at like 3.8, 3.9, and it's very difficult today's scoring environment, which this total reflects. This total is sitting around 38.5, 39 to cover games with margin. This year, dogs of over a field goal are 47-26 against the spread, 64.5%. Frank Reich, for what it's worth, as an underdog of over 3 points on the road, is 12-3-1 against the spread. But there's a couple things that I like here about this matchup. The Colts defense, which is much healthier now in the front seven. Leonard should be off the snap restriction, or as much the snap count restriction that he was on last week, or it's going to be loosened, they say. I don't know if we'll be up to full speed. Kwity Paye is expected to be back, they think. And, Buckner was dealing with an injury. So that front seven is now as healthy as it's been in a while. And they've been good against the run all year. 6th in rush success rate, 6th in rush DVOA. That's the bread and butter of the Patriots. The weakness of the Indianapolis defense so far this year has been their secondary. But you're not going to really get beat and burnt by this New England passing attack. Mac Jones has not been good. I mean, he is 25th in adjusted EPA per play among all qualified quarterbacks. You look at that New England game last week. Would they average under 4 yards per play? Mac Jones made some questionable throws, and he just doesn't look comfortable right now, and he hasn't played well all year. And granted, he doesn't have the best group of receivers to work with, which I think works in Indianapolis's favor here. And then on the other side of the ball, Jonathan Taylor is dealing with an ankle, so it's worth monitoring here. I think he's going to end up playing, but he didn't practice today. He got it taped up during the game and then went back in. He still doesn't look 100%, but the Patriots' run defense has been really poor here. So I think if he does play, he can have a decent day. And this is where Ellinger's mobility can come into play against a New England team that does get pressure at a pretty high rate. But it's a New England defense that also is just Jekyll and Hyde, because they're young. 1 week they look good, the next week they don't. And every time, they look good, the next week they have a really poor performance. And I liked what I saw from Ellinger last week. He looked comfortable, poised. In the second half alone, he was 11 of 13 for 150 yards, including a 20-yard dime to Michael Pittman, who potentially could have got out of bounds if he caught it. I mean, he literally dropped wide open. It was put right in his hands to try. He could have got out of bounds to set up a potential Colts game-winning field goal attempt. So he looked comfortable. I thought he had a bad fumble in the red zone early, but he looked comfortable overall, and especially in the second half. So I think he can build on that. The Colts also fired their offensive coordinator. A lot of talk about his involvement in the scripted portion of the play of games. The Colts, since Wright got there prior to this year, were the second best team in the NFL on offense in the first 15 plays of a game. This year, they haven't scored in an opening drive. They've been the worst. So maybe we'll see a little nuance and switch up the script here. I also like how Ellinger went to Stephon Gilmore, was the word earlier this week, and said, "Tell me everything you know about Belichick." Seems to be approaching this right. But I just think ultimately it's too high. It's a decent matchup for the Colts defense. And it's tough to cover this number with a total of 39 against a very limited Patriots offense.
Yeah, I mean, Whack Wilson last week, 5-point loss because they got that touchdown late, and the Patriots dominated. I think it's just the Jets defense kept them in it, but and then we saw
1 by 5 with Wilson throwing interceptions all over the field.
Shouts to the guy who tweeted us saying we were wrong about Zach Wilson and he has that dog in him. Where is it? I don't see it. But
yeah, so Wilson had that one. He'll have one touchdown throw. I'm like, he'll complete like one long pass, and then I'll get mentions. I'm like, yeah, he still has an NFL quarterback. He's going to complete some passes. But by the way, in that Patriots game against the Jets, very, very questionable roughing the passer call on that changed the entire game on a Mac Jones horrendous throw. And he got hit little late. Had nothing to do with the throw, but he got away with that one. And I don't understand now we're with the NFL, we're going to like, okay, wait. All right, yep. It's not a catch. Like, and now it's taking a little. I like it. No one's had to challenge it anymore. Do the same thing with these game-changing calls that swing win probability 1,000,000%. Okay, yeah, he didn't hit him in the head. Clean hit. It wasn't roughing the passer. Okay. Correction. After further discussion, it is not roughing the passer. It's that easy. Anyway.
Speaking of which, since we're on the subject, let me get your thoughts. What are your thoughts on referee impact, if any? Because I was looking, we have the referee filter in Action Labs, and I happen to see that Quay Martin, who's refereeing this Patriots Colts game, underdogs have a 43-23 against the spread record when he is the referee, and it actually grades as an A graded trend, which means like the sample size checks out and all that stuff. So just curious as to, do you think there's certain refs that have kind of like impact, or is it just all randomness?
I think it's mostly noise. There's certain refs that like to call specific types of penalties more often than others. And then depending on the style of a team, that could impact it. But there are certain officials, I do believe this in every sport. You'll see this in MLB, basketball. I think Hockey is one of them. You have to check his road and underdog records, but that they like to play like the villain almost. So that there's some like villain qualities of some refs that just like, oh, this crowd's gonna get mad at me, and some umps like will favor the home crowd, like, that's what home field advantage is about. But some like officials like to go against that and love to be the guy, like the kind of the heel. So I don't know. I think that you can find some things. You have to really dig, but like most trends, I like to have some sort of explanation as to why. Now, sometimes you might not be able to identify that particular reason, and if the sample size is large enough and you don't think the market is adjusted, maybe there's something there. But I do think it's mostly noise. But there are some hidden gems, and look, they're human, so there's some human element to this that could ultimately impact it. My biggest thing is that there are officials that throw many more flags every year. It's Hockley, Sheffers, Boger, that just introduce much more variance into a game with these game-changing calls that might not be correct, that make it more difficult to handicap because there's just more variance involved in the outcome.
Yeah, and to your point, Sean Hockley road dogs against the spread are 25-14, 64% when he's the ref. So that kind of lends itself to what you're talking about.
Thanksgiving game, and he threw 17,000 pass interference flags on the Cowboys against the Raiders.
Yeah, it was like the same dude. Was it Anthony Brown? I think it was. Yep. Who got
that was the Hockley game. He
flags
knew he was
or something like that.
He had the national stage. I think they got flagged for 185 yards of penalties, the Cowboys, in that game. So yeah, there's some hidden gems for there.
And Boger he's usually good for home teams. So he actually likes to be the hero. He's
nice. I could see that.
Yeah.
The Seattle Mariners.
Oh man. Yeah. End of the Giants game. That was bad.
Yeah, he's getting up there. They I don't know if they have like an age restriction on officials, but I feel like in every sport that I don't know, it's probably age discrimination. But like just to have the like the coordination, the speed, and like I couldn't do it I couldn't go out there in an NFL field and officiate when I'm 70 years old. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, he was mumbling. It was weird. It was a weird game from him, that Giants game. But let me get into my first pick, the second overall of.
But you agree, right? Ultimately, you agree with that?
The Colts?
Yep.
Yeah. Like I mean that way too. Like so another thing I like about the Colts in this spot, haven't bet them yet, but I was thinking about them, is that, they play a lot of zone. We talk about that when going up against Trevor Lawrence, but Mac Jones and the Patriots, they've been, or at least Mac Jones has been top 5 against man, but 20th against zone in yards per targeted pass. So, this kind of defense tends to give them problems. So that could kind of keep the game a little bit lower scoring. And that's how you get that cover with that +5.5. So and I think it might go to 6 if Taylor misses another day to practice.
Yep.
So
that's why I wanted to ask you again, because I just wanted to say I haven't put this in the app yet. Because it's at 5.5, and 5 is a pretty dead number, and it's way more advantageous to wait. So I'm going to wait to see if this pops up, and if it goes down to 5, and I miss out on the 5.5, so be it. But with some of the injury news out there, it's worth waiting. So that's why it's not in the app, and just wanted to give that piece of advice for anyone when you're dealing with a 5.5 line. But anyway, Gad, what do you got?
For my first pick in the second overall of the Week 9 Sunday 6-pack presented by FanDuel, I am going with the Washington Commanders +3.5 at home with Jerome Boger.
Predicted.
Against the Minnesota Vikings. I am, man. I told you, the minute they get Carson Wentz out of here, first of all, they're winning. So there's that. But I look at this matchup and, like, obviously Washington, very, very average team. But I think the perception here is kind of skewed in that I think people look at Washington as a bad team and Minnesota as a very good team. And so Minnesota is getting more than the field goal on the road here. And I don't think that should be the case, because you look at Minnesota this year, they're 6-1 straight up, but they've actually been outgained on average 383 to 346. So this team is not quite as good as it looks on paper. Meanwhile, Washington, 2 Taylor Heineke starts, outgained Green Bay 364 to 232, outgained Indianapolis 362 to 324. So they're doing just enough with him behind center. But I like their defense in this spot. Washington's defense, since they benched William Jackson, who now is traded to Pittsburgh, but they benched him in week 5. In weeks 1 to 4, they were 20th in EPA per dropback allowed. Since benching him, they're 8th in EPA per dropback allowed. And even though they basically benched Jackson because he couldn't pick up their zone and match scheme, Washington still plays more man coverage than most teams in the league. They play the 7th highest rate of man coverage. Well, why is that important? Because Minnesota, they have been struggling against man coverage this year, just 6.3 yards per targeted pass, 27th in the league. This Washington defensive front is also the best Minnesota has faced this season. Their 26% pressure rate is 4th in the league. Kirk Cousins, 14th from a clean pocket with a 103 passer rating, but under pressure, that drops to 62, which is 26th. And I don't think he'll have another one of those big Dalvin Cook games like he had last week, because Washington is number 2 in run DVOA. So they could get the Vikings in some must-pass situations where I think they could get some pressure and affect Cousins. And then on the other side of the ball, yes, Zadarius Smith is balling, but Minnesota's still below average in pressure. Heineke this year, 132 rating from a clean pocket. Minnesota does not blitz, so I don't think much is going to change on that front. But if they do blitz, Heineke's also been tearing it up against the blitz with a 111 rating. And Minnesota, dead last in DVOA against opposing number 1 wide receivers, which benefits the Commanders because Heineke, unlike Wentz, Heineke funnels the ball to Terry McLaurin a lot more. Like, he feeds him. Wentz was giving him just 6.2 targets per game. He was averaging just 61 receiving yards, under 4 catches with Wentz. With Heineke, 5.5 catches per game, 93 yards, and half a touchdown. So his numbers go way up, and this is the perfect defense for that. You have Heineke since last November, his last 10 games, last 10 starts, 8-2 against the spread. One of those losses was by a half point, so he could easily be 9-1 against the spread in his last 10. And Kirk Cousins, off a straight up win with the Vikings just 13, 22-1 against the spread, 37%. So for the third straight week, give me the Commanders.
Yeah, I don't hate this. The Vikings continue to win coin flip games. They've won about 5 or 6 this year against and some backup quarterbacks. And yeah, their defense is not great to me. And this field can kind of slow them down a little bit, which I think works in Washington's favor. So yeah, I think getting over a field goal here. I agree. By the way, yeah, it's interesting that William Jackson, he says Washington Rivera's always had like a zone scheme, and William Jackson's a man corner, but and the Steelers want to run more man, but there's only one team that runs more man than zone, and that's the Giants in the league. And like Washington runs man, I think at 30%, like the Steelers are like 33. So
yeah, they're both top 10.
Yeah. It's not, yeah, we'll see. Some people are like, oh, now this is going to solve all of the Steelers issues. I'll tell you what William Jackson's issue is. He's 30. As I said many times on this podcast, for a man corner at the age of 30. No, I agree. I think this is Washington or nothing, but over a field goal. The Vikings voodoo is certainly going to run out. They would have probably lost. There was a 4th down that Kyler didn't convert late on a potential.
Oh yeah, that when he was like a half yard short.
Yeah, but
man,
the game really turned on my guy Greg Dortch. He muffed the punt.
Yeah, man.
20.
I mean,
getting the ball down too is tough.
That seems like, because games, you mentioned the stat with underdogs, and I feel like I'm pretty sure games are just closer this year. I think the margin of victory is down, and it just seems like so many of these games now, even more than usual, are just being decided on these muff punts, whether it's a total, a spread, whatever. So, that's the kind of bounce
down, but that's because the scoring environment's down. So it's
exactly.
So margin. Unders are off to their best start 3 weeks since 1991. But no, I agree with.
Last week, remember I asked you like which under should I play, and I think all of them hit. Like all the ones we talked about hit.
Oh yeah,
like yeah, should Giants, Seattle, Houston, and Tennessee. I think there's a third one. I forget, but I think all of them hit because every under hits every week. But where are you going with pick number 2?
All right, for my second pick and the third overall of the Week 9 Sunday 6-pack, I'm going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers -3. I think it's -3 at FanDuel. See if you can get 2.5 out there. If you can shop around or wait on FanDuel, it's been popping back and forth all week, but I do still like it at 3. Look, when I look at this, both of these teams are semi-broken. The Rams are much more broken. So I'm getting, I'll break it down in the simplest terms. I'm getting the Bucs, who have the better offense, the better defense, and the better special teams at home off extended rest against a Rams team coming across the country. I know McVay has been good going from West East Coast in a small sample size against the spread, but this is just a different team. When I look here, just to give you, and Bucs are getting healthier. I think they're going to get some key defenders back. Their wide receivers have just been banged up all year. They're finally getting back up to speed. And Brady has not looked the same under pressure. I mean, his average depth of target drops to like 3.8 yards.
Yeah,
when he's under pressure.
It's just automatic dump to the running back.
But the Rams get pressure at 12% of the time, second fewest rate in the NFL. They're not getting any pressure. When Brady has a clean pocket, he leads the NFL 15 big-time throws. He has 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. Numbers look fine. So, yeah, I mean, adjusted EPA per play, Brady 13th in the league, Stafford 26th. How about adjusted EPA per play for the offense overall? Bucs 20th, Rams 32nd. Worst offense in the league from an EPA per play perspective. EPA per play on defense, Bucs 8th, Rams 16th. So then if we break it down a little further, neither team will be able to run the ball here with much success. So how about let's look at when these two teams drop back. EPA per dropback, Bucks defense, 6th, also 6th in success rate. Rams, 27th and 21st in success rate. I mean, just everything points to Tampa here, especially being under a field goal or below at home in a good spot. And 2 desperate teams. You also have your revenge factor from last year. Don't care about that, but from the playoffs. But there's just something. And then I didn't even mention that Cooper Kupp might not be 100%. Who knows? It's an ankle. They say he's going to be good, but you never know when that flares up or what kind of swelling he's going to be dealing with. Look at Keenan Allen, who apparently isn't going to play again, and his injury is getting worse. But, I mean, here are the quarterbacks with negative EPA per play this year besides Stafford, who, by the way, has a 5.9 yard average depth of target. That's the lowest in the NFL. In 2019, he was the highest in the NFL at 10.8. Last year, he was at 8.3. He's down to 5.9. Now, Van Jefferson getting back, we'll hope that a little bit, but
he's running rinse sprints out there last week.
Yeah, I mean, eventually, I'm saying. It is, but the offensive line is bad, and everything is bad. Here are the quarterbacks with negative EPA per play besides Stafford. Winston, benched. Ryan, benched. Bortles, Trubisky, benched. Zach Wilson should be benched. Carson Wentz, benched. Flacco, benched. Mayfield, benched. Davis Mills should be sitting on a bench somewhere. And Kenny Pickett. That's it. Those are your quarterbacks with negative EPA per play. And Stafford. So I think this is the spot for the Bucks. They're getting healthier, extended rest, better offense, better defense, better special teams. And I think when both these quarterbacks drop back, the Bucks are more likely to have success on defense than the Rams will. Brady with a clean pocket here, I think will have success at home. Give me Tampa.
It's really surprising to me that after the Rams made, some high risk, high reward, but still very prudent moves to kind of address, they had this roster that was very studs and scrubs, stars and scrubs, you could say. And it's just surprising to me now that they did not foresee any of this. Like, you don't re-sign Von Miller, and now you have absolutely zero edge rush. And even the fact that you have the best defensive player in the game, you're still essentially getting zero pressure because he's on the inside and they're double, triple teaming him.
Just double, yeah.
Right. And they have Leonard Floyd, who just got his first couple of sacks. But it's just very surprising to me that a team that kind of executed the plan and crafted a roster on the fly to go win a Super Bowl. Granted, of course, they had some luck along the way, but that now they just seem so clueless. And, even McVay is not on his game right now. I mean, he waved the white.
San Francisco, by the way, is very telling that I know that San Fran owns them, but that is San Francisco is very hurt and they get blown out and only score 14 points. And that should tell you something off the bye. But go ahead, what were we going to say?
No,
when he had Kupp still in the game. Kupp still in the game.
After you waved the white flag on a run on 3rd and 16 with 5 minutes to go, now you're back throwing to your best player for absolutely no reason. And of course, he messes up his ankle, and now you put this game in jeopardy. So everything seems to be off with the Rams. Everything seems to be off with the Bucks too. I would much prefer the 2.5, obviously, to the 3, because this Bucks team, I don't know if they're beating anybody by more than 3 points these days either. I can't really get a handle on it. Every time I think the Bucks are they do something, they don't. But I agree, this Rams team is just complete. This is a bad Rams team, a legitimate bad football team. They don't get pressure. They're not efficient on offense. They are over reliant on one player. They cannot run the ball. They cannot block. You're right. Yeah, their best player. Their best cover man is not really impacting games. It's just, it's a mess out there. Yeah. All right. For my second pick and the 4th overall of the Week 9 Sunday 6-pack presented by FanDuel, I'm going with the Carolina Panthers plus 7.5 at the Cincinnati Bengals. And this is another one of these spots where you have an underdog, you have a low total game. And I think this Panthers team, ever since he got rid of Matt Rule. I just like the way this team is playing, and I think they're going to give teams problems, especially if they kind of overlook them coming in. So I think this is what's going to happen with the Panthers. Look at what happened to Cleveland last week on defense. They came into the game on Monday night. They were ranked bottom 5 in pass defense, DVOA. Everyone was like, what's wrong with this defense? And then they hold the Bengals to 193 net yards and 40 dropbacks, 4.8 net yards per attempt. Now they rank 16th in pass defense DVOA. So they jumped 12 spots. I think the Panthers are going to do something similar because I think they're better than their metrics on paper say. And part of that is, just like the Browns, Panthers haven't been completely healthy, but you do have JC Horn back. He's missed about 30% of the snaps this season, but on 212 coverage snaps per Pro Football Focus, 19 targets, which is great. People are barely throwing at him. 8 catches, 46 yards. So 46 yards on 19 targets, 46 yards on 212 snaps. No touchdowns, 1 pick. Without Chase, I just think this Bengals offense is going to struggle because remember, it struggled with Chase at times. Like for all the star power and firepower they had, this Bengals offense was not looking great, and they were in a lot of one-score games early in the year. But you look at the numbers. Burrow throwing to Chase, 10.3 yards per attempt, 16.1 yards per completion, and a 9.7% touchdown rate per target. To everyone else, 7.6 yards per attempt. So he drops over 2.5 yards per attempt, 10.6 yards per completion, which means he drops 5.5 yards there. And the touchdown rate is more than cut in half at 4.5%. So a completely different offense when Chase is out of the lineup. And it affects the other receivers too. It affects the whole offense because it just makes them easier to defend. T. Higgins, 9.5 yards per target with Chase in the lineup, 8.5 yards per target with Chase not in the lineup. Tyler Boyd, 9.2 yards per target with Chase in the lineup, 7.7 with Chase not in the lineup. And even Joe Mixon, still not good, but 3.8 yards per carry with Chase, 3.6 without. Carolina 7th in run defense DVOA. So I don't think the Bengals will be able to just run the ball and kind of get out of here. I think they're going to have to put it up. And I think the Cincinnati O-line still not good. I think Brian Burns can get to him for a sack or two. And then on the other side of the ball, this Panthers offense, I still think it can do enough. I mean, we saw, obviously, if you had the Panthers, PJ Walker bails you out with the longest air yard touchdown of all time. And then it's the crazy sweat after that because
62
of
62 yards.
Yeah, 60. Yeah. More, I think, wasn't it more than that? I think
64,
it was 67 in the
64.
air. Yeah, something like that.
Was it?
Yeah, because it was
Holy
62
Lord.
yards just from the line of scrimmage to the end zone. So he was obviously behind the line of scrimmage and threw it into like the middle of the end zone. So yeah, it was a crazy play, but that play. So he was under pressure on that play. So it actually bumped his rating under pressure up to 97, which is higher than his rating from a clean pocket. But I digress. I just think that this Bengals defense on a short week is in a bad spot. You have a defense that in the first 3 weeks of the season, when DJ Reader, their interior lineman, was healthy, they were allowing the 5th lowest rushing success rate, just under 34%. Since he went down, they're allowing the 5th highest rush success rate at 46.4%. And Carolina's rushed for 169 or more yards in both games since they traded Christian McCaffrey. So they really haven't missed a beat with that rushing attack. Deontay Foreman. I mean, if I had a dollar for every time the commentator called Deontay Foreman Derrick Henry or compared him to Derrick Henry, and so I'd be rich right now. But nevertheless, he's playing well. And then when they throw the ball, Chidobe Awuzie tore his ACL in that Monday night game. He was allowing a 42% catch rate and 5.1 yards per target on 43 targets. So a large amount of targets were coming his way, and he was shutting them down. And without him here, it's going to be tougher to guard DJ Moore, who ever since PJ Walker has become the starter, now Moore is all of a sudden averaging 76 yards per game, 5.3 catches. He scored in 2 of the 3. So he's finally come to life. Carolina's not giving up sacks with PJ. He's getting the ball out. 4 sacks in his 3 starts compared to 17 sacks in the 5 games that Mayfield started, and Cincinnati's still below average in pressure. So, there were just receivers running open last week for Cleveland. Brissett was 14 to 17 for 234 and a touch from a clean pocket. He's also averaging over 8 yards an attempt the few times he was pressured. So it's just going to be really tough to fix all of this on a short week. And there's still not a ton of tape on this Carolina offense with Walker. So I just think this is a tough spot. And historically, a lot of the trends back it up. Road underdogs in week 9 or 10, facing a team that's covering 60% or more of the time, like the Bengals are. The road dog is 77, 45, and 2 against the spread, 63% since 2005. Single-digit road underdogs against a home favorite on short rest, 133 at 95 and 7 against the spread, 58% since 05. Week 9 underdogs by 7 or more are 42, 26, and 1, 62% against the spread since 05. Burrow, just 1-4 against the spread in his career when favored by 7 or more. And PJ Walker, all-time 5 starts, 4-1 against the spread with 3 outright wins, and he's covering by an average of 16.5 points per game. So give me the Bengals at over a touchdown in a low total game. Let me say it again. So give me the Panthers at over a touchdown in a low total game.
That might be a sign of your run.
I know, right?
All right. I'll be mentioning this game later in the show, so I'm just going to move on to my third pick in the 5th overall of the Week 9 Sunday 6-pack. Let's get uncomfortable. Let's go with the Arizona Cardinals -2 at home against the Seattle Seahawks. Look, I don't like to play. This is probably the last week I can play Cliff Kingsbury, Week 9. I don't like to bet Cliff Kingsbury. I did it last week, and he had some time management issues. They also came out and were down early again, like they're every week. This is why this is a third pick, because I'm going to bet it pregame. I'm going to explain why in a second, but I'm also going to bet it live when they go down 7-0, as they always do each and every week. But let's break this one down. I mean, when these two teams met 3 weeks ago, and the Cardinals were laying 2.5 at Seattle, and neither team did anything. They both averaged 4.5 yards per play. The only difference between the two teams, the Cardinals were 1 of 5 on 4th downs. It was an even game. The Cardinals' passing game was much less efficient than Seattle's, and Seattle's running game was way less efficient than Arizona's. Well, there was no DeAndre Hopkins there. We obviously know how much better Arizona's. He's been probably the best receiver in the NFL since coming back. So we got to upgrade from that game. You upgrade the Seahawks a little bit, and then since then they beat up a beat up Chargers team, and then a great spot against the Giants last week that I talked about last week. They get upgraded. The Cardinals, though, they beat the Saints, and then they exceeded my expectations last week in Minnesota. They were +4, and it was a dead even game, graded out as a dead even push. And like I said, they got Hopkins back. They're -2.5 in Seattle. And I know we were already starting to upgrade Seattle. Now I can get Arizona -2 at home. And by the way, Arizona hasn't been good at home. Has covered their last 2 at home. And look, Seattle, what Geno Smith is doing is incredible. But if you really dig deeper, a lot of his success is coming on plays with an option to throw it. An option to run or throw. Play action has been enormous.
Yeah.
Play action has been enormous in a lot of his success. And Kenneth Walker has been part of that. But on play action passes, he is absolutely shredding. And he's done a lot of his damage against some of the worst defenses in the NFL. Because if you look at teams that have defended the run well, Geno Smith's results haven't been there, because you don't have to start bringing everybody up and defending the run. So if you look at Geno Smith's and Arizona's run defense since week 1, has been one of the better units in the NFL. What did Geno Smith do against Arizona in the first game? He threw for under 200 yards. So look, Geno Smith, like a Rich Gannon, has done this. We've seen Rich Gannon, a perennial backup, come late in his career. Or is he more like a Nick Foles, who's a kind of a flashman? This is still a small sample size. My job when I'm betting the NFL is to identify line value and the top of the market. I am seeing people saying Seattle could go to the Super Bowl. Geno Smith's going to win MVP. The talk out of the Seattle camp is insane. To me, feels like the top of the market for a Seattle team that coming into the year, remember, just 8 weeks ago, everyone said is the worst team in the NFL. Now they're the best in the NFC. No, not so fast. So yeah, we're getting plus the revenge factor here in a divisional game within a 3-week stretch. I always like the team that lost. I don't love the staff of Arizona, but I do like their defensive staff. Because the team that won, who didn't do anything in that game, they averaged 4.5 yards per play. They don't tend to make the adjustments in these quick turnaround revenge divisional spots. Like Arizona will do stuff different. They also have Hopkins for this matchup. Kyler Murray's legs were big in that first game. I'm sure they will be again. But if you look at Geno Smith, it's like, okay, last week against the Giants, he threw for 200 yards. Against the Chargers, he threw for 200 yards. Against the Cardinals, he threw for under 200. Against the Saints, in a spot where they're come back from London, where every team goes over their team total, and they were in comeback mode. He threw for 270. Against San Fran, who was stopping the run, 190. Against Denver, who was stopping the run, 190. And then he threw for like 700 combined yards against the Falcons and Lions, because that's what everyone does. So I think that the Geno Smith has been amazing. High completion percentage. He grades out even if you adjust for opponent. Now, some of these opponents have had injuries very well, but a lot of this damage has come in favorable situations, favorable game states, favorable opponents. And I just think that the love for Seattle has gone way overboard. So getting Arizona here at -2 at home, to me, I have to take it. And I will also take it live once they go down. This feels like the top of the market for a Seattle team that everyone's in love with now for beating Russell Wilson, Detroit without all their offensive players, this Cardinals team without Hopkins, the Chargers backups, and the Giants. That's their wins. So let's relax a little bit on Seattle. Give me Arizona and the fake sharp cliffs.
I don't know. My gut's telling me this is Seattle's just gonna win this game, and I from a betting perspective, first of all, Arizona also a lot unluckier than Seattle. Our luck rankings have been crushing, and that kind of identifies as one of the top plays, Arizona against Seattle. The one thing I'll say is, when you talk about kind of top of the market, and you have been pretty good at identifying that. I think you had the Steelers at the right time and the Packers, obviously. So, but like I always prefer to be getting points in these situations. Like I would love to fade Seattle as a favorite, but here they are still an underdog. It's like I can't understand I can't get a good grasp on Arizona, because like you mentioned their run defense, right? Well, their run defense was good until last week when they give up 20 for 111 and a touchdown to Cook, 5 for 40 and a touchdown to Madison, and Kirk Cousins runs for 22 yards and a touchdown. Is that going to carry over to this week? Because if it does, that's a problem. And Minnesota goes for 29, 173 and 3. So I just really can't get a handle on this Arizona team. I'm starting to agree with you on Cliff even more than before, because it just seems like they have too much talent on offense and they're always going horizontally instead of vertically. It's just, I don't know. This one worries me. I'm not gonna lie. I just gut feel it. This is a Cliff. You know what I mean? You might be mad at Cliff after this one.
I might, but I have to sell. This is not about the Cardinals more as it is about selling Seattle, and I think this is the right time to do it. I mean, everywhere I look, and the other thing that gives me confidence here is I was like, whoa, how this line's not 3. Every person in the world is betting Seattle.
I saw that. Yeah, it's like 90%, 83% of the bets.
I was
90%
shocked. No one's betting. No one's betting this. So then I'm like, okay, so this line is obviously correct because you're drawing a ton of. It's not like no one is betting. Everyone's betting Seattle here, and everywhere I look, it's like Seattle. Usually a sign. And remember, this is a team that in 8 weeks, after beating Russell Wilson, the Lions without all their players on offense,
here you go,
defense, the Cardinals without Hopkins, the Chargers with all their injuries, and then the Giants last week. That's their resume, and that's going to take them from the worst team in the NFL to Geno Smith MVP. We're going to the Super Bowl. No, it's time to sell.
If Seattle wins this game, are they favored at home against Tampa Bay in Week 10?
Depends what Tampa does.
Yeah. Wow. What a season, man. I mean, I'll be rooting for you. I'll be rooting for you. I'm gonna just take my L with Arizona and keep it pushing. All right, for my third pick and is it six?
Bucks are at home. Bucks are at home.
Oh, Bucks are at home. Oh, my bad. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, still. No, Seahawks are at home. Seahawks are at home. Seahawks are at home.
Are you sure?
Yep, I'm looking at it right now. They're at Arizona this week and then versus Tampa Bay next week.
I think that game's in Germany, actually.
Oh, that's it. You're right. It's a neutral site. Well, either way, I mean, if Seattle wins this game, and Tampa Bay doesn't look great.
Seattle wins and Tampa loses. It could be
like Seattle -1 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be pick. But if Tampa wins and looks decent, Tampa will be -2.5, 3.
Yeah.
If Seattle also loses, they'll be -3. But anyway, Munich. We got a Munich game next week.
Weird season gets weirder. For my third pick and the 6th overall of the Week 9 Sunday 6-pack presented by FanDuel, I am going with, here's an uncomfortable one. Let's take a team that's only half a team because they don't have a defense, but I'm still taking them. Detroit +3.5 at home against the Green Bay Packers. And this is the time in the season. It's a shorter slate. They only got, I think, 11 games here. When I'm looking for things in an edge, I'm attacking teams and testing them and seeing if they can beat me. And that's what I'm doing to this Green Bay team, because the Lions, and you've talked about this, on the road, Jared Goff turns into a pumpkin. 10 points per game are the Lions averaging on the road. But let's look at their home games. They played 4 home games. 35 points against Philadelphia, and they lose by 3. 36 points against Washington, and they win by 9. 45 points against Seattle, they lose by 3. And
without Brown and Swift, some of these games.
Yeah, and 27 points last week at home against the Dolphins, and they lose by 4. Okay, cool. Obviously, some people will look at it and say, oh my God, they can't guard anybody. They're scoring all these points and still losing games. But this is perfect. Why? Because we're facing the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers have not scored more than 27 points in a game yet. In one of the games, they scored 20. They did it twice. In one of the games, they needed overtime to do it. So I welcome a shootout. Let's see if the Green Bay Packers are really, like completely unbroken and can actually put up 30 plus, which they're probably going to have to do to win and cover this game. And by the way, Detroit 35, 36, 45, 27. The Lions did that against 4 defenses that averaged a defensive DVOA rank of 13th. 3 of them were top 15. Philly was 2nd. Seattle is 11th, and Washington's 15th. Green Bay is 22nd. So this is one of the lesser defenses. And it doesn't make sense because Green Bay has talent, but they're just, Joe Barry the scheme ain't it in Green Bay. If you're a Green Bay Packer fan, you know all too well, everyone's calling for his head, but this defense underachieves on a yearly basis, it seems like. And so this will go down as one of the weaker defenses the Lions have faced at home for a team that's averaging well over 30 points per game at home. Early down, EPA per play allowed. The Green Bay Packers are dead last in the entire league. They are worse on early downs from an EPA perspective than even the Detroit Lions. So this Green Bay defense, hold this Lions team to under 27, which no one's been able to do, or Packers offense, go out there and score 30, which you also haven't been able to do. I'll take my chances with either of those outcomes, especially getting more than a field goal. Jared Goff, 8 yards per attempt at home, 11 touchdowns, 2 picks. On the road, 7.2 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 4 picks. And Aaron Rodgers, he's been a lot better in Lambeau, of course. At home, 7.2 yards per attempt, 244 yards per game, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick, 5-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. On the road, Rodgers just 6.3 yards per attempt, just 212 passing yards per game, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. So just a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. So he hasn't been good outside of Lambeau. And then you look at divisional home dogs by under 6, 60-40 against the spread since 2018. Teams on a 4-game against the spread losing streak, which Detroit is on. They haven't covered after being like the cover darlings of the league. They haven't covered in 4 games. But teams that have failed to cover for 4 straight in week 6 through 9, 41, 23, and 2 against the spread, 64% since 2005. Aaron Rodgers, everyone always talks about him in the division. Well, through 2015 in divisional road games, great. 16-7 against the spread. Fantastic. Do not want to fade him. But from 2016 on, just 6-11 against the spread is Aaron Rodgers in divisional road games. And remember, almost all of those games, he had Devontae Adams or some other form of better receivers than he's going to have in this spot. And Detroit, they play a lot of man coverage. They obviously haven't been great at it. They just fired their defensive backs coach. So maybe they also have kind of the element of, maybe something will change, kind of like what you're talking about with the Colts and their offensive coordinator. Maybe they do something a little different. Anything's better than what they've been doing, obviously. But this Packer offense has not been good against man coverage, just 6.8 yards per targeted pass, 26 in the league. So, I'm going to take this bad Lions defense and test the Green Bay Packers. Can you outscore this Lions team indoor at home? Or are we going to see the same old Packers team that's just not quite right, just like a lot of these other teams with these older quarterbacks, just not quite right this year? I'm going to test them. Give me Detroit plus 3.5 against the Pack.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about this one. Maybe because I just have PTSD from having Detroit last week, plus 3.5 at home in a game it led 2 touchdowns and led the entire game until the end. And then Goff throws it on 4th and 1 at the end, trying to go down the field instead of running upon that offensive line. But I digress. I'm a little worried just because I think the Green Bay offense is I still think we're close to the bottom of the market in Green Bay. They got the cover last week. But I just feel like they're gonna have a game where the offense, and look, I don't blame you for just making them prove it, but they're still top 10 in success rate on offense. And if they get a lead, which they could go against Detroit, that's when their defense will actually work, because they still can't defend the run. But Detroit, we'll see if Swift plays, can have success with that offensive line and leaning on the run and then setting up the short passing attack with Goff. But Green Bay, they don't have no explosiveness, but they're still able to move the ball. And, I think they're 6th or 7th in success rate. EPA numbers are bad because there's no explosiveness. And they haven't been converting touchdowns in the red zone. And their 4th downs have been killer. I think they're 17% on the year on 4th downs. And if you look on late downs, they're dead last in EPA per play on offense, which tend to be higher variance. So I do think at some point there's going to be a correction on this Green Bay offense that it's not as bad as it looks because it's semi-efficient. And they went to their backs more last week, which I think was smart. And if they do that again here, they should have success. But just the 4th downs alone have been killer because this isn't a team that's going to put up a ton of points. So they're due to go for 7 for their next 7 on 4th down conversions, which obviously have massive win probability swings in games. And then also in the red zone, Lions have been scoring I think near 75% of their red zone trips have ended in touchdowns. By the way, the Rams are also scoring a high percentage and the Bucs aren't. There's some regression there back to the Bucs play. But yeah, I'm a little afraid of okay, the Packers offense isn't great, but they've been running unlucky. And the Lions would be that opponent that would just, of course, everything would go right against. So but I don't mind taking the 3 year.
Yeah, I actually bought up. I got a 4 at -114. It's already in the app. So if you can get that, a 4 at -115 or something like that, that as you mentioned, that was the script for the Lions last week. So you would at least get the push. But that's kind of why I like this bet. It's because the Packers could have a game where they turn it around on offense, and they're still not guaranteed to cover or win because the Lions are putting up 35 points a game at home. Like, this could just be a shootout. So yeah, prove it to me.
Yep.
Green Bay, prove it to me.